July 16th, 2020 meeting of the Woodbridge Township Board of Education will please come to order. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson.
Here.
Mr. Harris. I think you're on mute, Mr. Harris. But I do see you.
I'm sorry, I'm here.
That's okay. Mr. Sedana.
Here.
Mr. Tamburello.
Here.
Mr. Treebwasser.
Here.
And Mr. Della Pietro.
Here. Okay, Mr. Secretary, as required by the Sunshine Law, please read the notice of meetings.
Thank you, Mr. President. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this Act, the Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted as follows: January 29, 2020, and July 2, 2020, emailed to the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, and the Municipal Clerk's Office, posted in Avenel Middle School and the Board of Education Administration Building, also published on the school district website.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wolferman. Ms. Anderson, please read the closed session statement.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to motion for the approval of the following closed session statement. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board must go into closed session in order to discuss subjects exempted from the public portion of our meeting. The discussions to be held in closed session will be regarding personnel matters. Additionally, the board will be discussing equity commission issues. Any information regarding the closed session discussion will be released to the public when the reasons for discussing these matters in closed session no longer exist.
Okay. I have a motion by Ms. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Mr. Treeweiser. I have a motion by Ms. Anderson, seconded by Mr. Treeweiser. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, ayes have it. Motion carried. Okay, at this time, the board is going to retire into closed session. We'll be back no earlier than 6:30. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll return to our regular session. Please rise for a salute to the flag and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Okay, do I have a motion to reconvene?
So motioned.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Treeweiser. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second by Ms. Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, motion carries. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson.
Here.
Ms. Bourdain.
Here.
Mr. Harris.
Here.
Mr. Sedana.
Here.
Mr. Tamburello.
Here.
Mr. Treebwasser.
Here.
And Mr. Della Pietro.
Here. Okay, will someone make a motion to approve the minutes of our previous meeting?
A motion?
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Harris. I have a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Treeweiser. Are there any additions or corrections? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Mr. Secretary, please state for the record any notice of bids received by the board.
Thank you, Mr. President. On July 7th, 2020, PSA bid water main replacement at Woodbridge High School. And also July 7th, 2020, PSA bid nurses restroom renovation at Menlo Park Terrace School number 19.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Okay, to facilitate the flow of this virtual meeting, all questions and comments from the public will be addressed after the presentations of all agendas. Okay, Dr. Zaga, please state for the record the superintendent's reports for the month of June 2020.
Mr. President, I have the student registers and fire drill reports, suspension reports for elementary and secondary schools, and the bomb threat reports.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Zaga. Okay, superintendent's agenda. Dr. Zaga, do you have any recommendations?
Mr. President, I have 8 items to present to the board.
Okay, do I have a motion for the superintendent's agenda?
So motioned.
I have a motion by Mr. Treewaj. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana,
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello,
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser,
Yes.
Mr. Delapietro.
Yes. Okay, at this time, Ms. Anderson and Dr. Zega will now share a special equity presentation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening. First, I would like to begin by saying all of the concerns that are brought to our attention, we treat very seriously. As a board, we listened humbly and have demonstrated that we listened by taking action. Is it possible to do better? Yes, much better. Next slide. Tonight, we will share our plans on how we will proceed with equity in action based on the following agenda. We will start with how we rolled out training with our staff. The board has created an equity committee called the Equity Commission, which I will chair. Our Department of Education approved a comprehensive equity plan, which will be the framework for this committee for identifying and removing any barriers within our school district. We will create a new position for the district, the Diversity and Equity Officer for Student Services. To make a meaningful impact, we must seek input on existing issues and opportunities for improvement from our stakeholders. Therefore, we will establish multiple channels of communication available to report acts of racism, bias, or inequity. That will include 1, the student voice focus groups, diversity councils in each school, a website to submit feedback confidentially. We will continuously review curriculum and policies. At this time, Dr. Zega will continue the presentation. Through the chair, Dr. Zega.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice President Anderson. At the end of June, we had the pleasure of meeting with Dr. Lashana Dean from William Patterson University for 3 days of administrator training. This training lasted for a couple of hours each day. It was very positive. The administrators will now be turnkeying that training to their staff. We will also be receiving training district-wide for all of our staff from the Bush Law Firm on all issues of equity and inequality. We will also be holding special training in the school year for affirmative action officers, for our anti-bullying coordinators, and also for our different teams in our school. And then finally, we will continuously analyze equity metrics, which includes how many, looking at a comparison of student body race versus the race of our honor roll students. We'll look at our student body race and our AP enrollment and our honors courses enrollment. We'll look at race versus discipline, race versus ASI and IRS and special ed. So we will continuously monitor our student groups and as compared to our racial groups in each school. And that's really a good source of data to analyze and determine what our actions are moving forward. The creation of the Equity Commission is a tremendous step forward for our community. The members, as chaired by Vice President Anderson, we will be constantly soliciting input from the schools and monitoring what schools are doing. We'll get monthly reports on district equity activities, as well as reviewing the equity metrics from each school. This is a very large job, a very large undertaking. So this board has made the commitment in these days of slashed budgets and budget cuts and spending money on PPE and trying to get back into school in September, this board and this community has made the commitment to funding a position of an equity officer. And we're working on the job description. We hope to have the job description approved in August, next meeting, next month. And that person, we envision, will be working with schools, students in the community to employ the best practices in equity, ensure that everyone is aware, not only aware of our practices, but also they are compliant in practicing. We expect this person to be holding parent academies and providing insight and recommendations for district policies. And especially the accountability piece is a large part. Just because it's in our policies and because we say we're going to do it, we need to do it. And it's my pleasure to commend the board and President Del Pietro for making the commitment, as I said, for funds in this time where we're looking at possibly budget shortfalls. This is so important, this one factor, and this issue, as it was brought up time and time again, it's an important thing for us to address, and address it with actionable measures, not just changing policy, but actionable things that you will be seeing in our schools very soon. One of the things that we were committed to doing was providing a voice for students. In other words, a sanctuary for students to voice their opinions, to hold difficult dialogues, report bias incidents, suggest change, meet regularly, and it will be. We're looking for input from current and former students. The administration has been meeting with student groups, and we are, as Mrs. Anderson said, we are taking their suggestions very, very seriously, and we are looking to make significant changes in how we do things. It's not okay for a bias incident to happen and for the student to have nowhere to go to seek resolution to that incident. So that's really one of the highest priorities that we're going to change, is giving students an opportunity, an avenue to seek out help and seek out counseling when they have been offended. Our diversity councils in each school will be mandatory. Again, this is another forum for student voice. The meetings will be supervised by administrators and the equity and diversity officer. So this would be another function of our new position that we're creating. And again, we're going to start analyzing metrics. It's important for students to know what the ethnic makeup of their school is. It's important for students to know that the ethnic makeup should be reflected in the makeup of the metrics. The number of students disciplined, the AP enrollment, the honor roll, all these things should have a correlation with the racial makeup of the school. And if it doesn't, that will guide our decision making. We will also place on our website and on each school's website, it's a new website, by the way, we will be placing an avenue for people to anonymously report bias incidents. So you don't necessarily have to show up in one of these groups or one of these committees. There'll be a place to report anonymously of issues that are going on. And then finally, we have already begun our curriculum review and our policy review. As we will be adding equity lessons to history and health and other areas of the curriculum that don't normally look at it. We're looking to add an ethnic studies course and possibly making it mandatory, a graduation requirement in both middle school and high school. This ethnic studies course will look at the challenges that different ethnic groups have had throughout history. And then finally, we're going to take a good hard look at our required literature. Some of the content of the literature that we're reading in our schools is on one maybe at least uncomfortable or at most offensive to some students. So we have to make sure that any curriculum that's presented in our classes is non-offensive. Our policy review, we're reviewing our harassment policy We're looking at trying to make mandatory training for offenders. We're even looking at some sort of parent component that to not only change behavior, but to educate. And the same as we would do for our random drug testing policy, we're looking at using extracurricular activities as a way to motivate to comply with the training. An important thing that came out of our student meetings was discipline isn't enough. Discipline, it should be discipline plus counseling. Especially after being out of school for 3 months, student mental well-being is going to be a big part of what we do next September. And so students who are disciplined, we want to make sure that they do have counseling. And then finally, police in our schools. We will be revising our police patrol duties and police inside the schools, where we will reduce, and not without compromising the safety of the students and the staff in our building. But there are ways to revise the patrols so that no one is meant to feel uncomfortable. No student is meant to feel uncomfortable in our schools. So this is a call to action. And as I said, these are not philosophical changes, although they're not only philosophical changes, they are also actionable things that are going to take place when we begin school. They've already started, and it's very, very important work. And as I said, we are right now in a chaos of trying to get back to school and trying to figure out what our schedule will look like in September. But equally important is all of this work in equity. Because if our students aren't comfortable, they won't learn. And they need to be comfortable, and every single one of them needs to have access to a great education. So we look forward to making strides in this, not just starting it, but results. So we will be reporting regularly to the board and to the public about the results of all of our equity actions. Any questions from the board? Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Zega. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Very good.
Sorry, Mr. President, one last thing, that presentation will be available on the website tomorrow. Very
good. Okay, Dr. Zega, Ms. Anderson, I'd like to thank you, for taking on this endeavor. So we're going to move forward with this, and we'll definitely have results. So it's going to be a very busy commission. I look forward to serving on it, and we'll move forward. Okay, at this time, we're going to move on to policy and planning agenda. Mr. Harris?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Delapietro. The Policy and Planning Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, presents the following one item. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sedana. Okay, are there any comments or questions from the board?
Mr. Delapietro?
Mr. Harris?
I did want to highlight for all those watching at home, and whether live or taped here, these are 5 significant changes in our policies, particularly in relation to health and safety, as we do prepare to return back to school in September. State of New Jersey is requiring us, as part of our reentry plan, to plan for some element of in-person education. So parents, this is the first reading of 2 for our new policies. They can change. However, they are, required in the current form. I believe we can add to them. So at some point, they will become a part of the student policy book of the school district. So please have a look at them. Of particular note, the board was reached out to probably, I guess, sometime today from concerned residents concerning face masks, face coverings for students. Initially, the state of New Jersey was providing guidance that students are highly encouraged to wear covers. It was recently changed that they are required to wear face coverings while at school. My understanding is, and Dr. Zega, correct me if I say anything wrong here, that students, while seated, if I'm not mistaken, can remove their mask, or face cover. But as soon as they get up to change seats or, sharpen a pencil, exit or enter a classroom, the face mask must go back on. That's a significant change. And I know Dr. Zegel, as well as the board, will have much more on a reentry plan in the forthcoming weeks and month ahead. But I just wanted to highlight for the audience those new policies that will be required of teachers, students, as well as our guests who try to visit the schools. So, Dr. Zegel, I hope I didn't botch anything there.
Mr. Harris, yes, we're still considering and I know people have asked me about our plan, and I know some districts have already published plans. It's very difficult because the Department of Education keeps changing the requirements, and there's still anybody who publishes a plan will have to have it approved by the DOE. So we hope to be able to present the plan to the board tomorrow, and then after board review, we can start to talk about presenting it to the public. But we've had several administrator meetings throughout the week. And like I said, we're at this point, every time the regulations change, as you mentioned, the regulations just changed about the face masks. So we are adjusting our plan, and we will get that plan out as quickly as possible. But it's an extreme undertaking, for 14,000 students trying to fit them all in and do it and keep them 6 feet apart, not only while they're in school, but while they're on the bus. So we hope to have that plan out early next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Steger.
Any further comments or questions from the board? Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by Mr. Sedana. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
Mr. Della Pietro?
Yes. Okay, moving on to curriculum, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Curriculum Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, present the following 9 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Sedana. Okay, are there any comments or questions from the board?
Mr. Della Pietro?
Mr. Harris?
I just wanted to highlight this. It was just clarified for me, and I appreciate Mr. Bader. It was brought up at the last meeting about the Amistad Commission required curriculum. That's teaching of African American Black history throughout school district. It's a state mandate. I wanted to clarify to the public, for those inquiring, the district is in compliance. It's part of our 3-year QSAC requirement to state qualified school accountability continuum. It's a compliance tool that the state uses to measure that school districts are in compliance with all the state mandates. So I wanted to emphasize that we are in compliance with the Amistad Commission, which is a good thing. Mr. Bader went even further to suggest that in working with student and parent advocates over the past month or two, that we're looking to go even beyond that as part of the work of the Equity Commission. So I want to commend not only the Equity Commission, but also the administration for taking those recommendations seriously and expanding upon the minimum requirements of the Amistad Commission, and perhaps going even further to better educate our students on issues of equity and racial and social justice. So thank you to the administration for their work on that. Thank you, Mr. Bader.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harris. I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Harris, seconded by Mr. Sedana. Are there any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
Mr. Della Pietro?
Yes. Okay, moving on to finance and insurance, Mr. Tamburello.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance and Insurance Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Business Administrator Board Secretary, presents the following 11 items. This evening, I move for the adoption of the foregoing 11 items.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Tamburello. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Treeweiser. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
Board President?
Mr. Tamburello? Go ahead.
Yeah, if I could highlight a couple of items here this evening, or one on the agenda. The number 11, I appreciate the Dr. Zaga and admin working with the board on language on number 11. It's a if voted on this evening, it's the board support for the Congressional CARES Act, provides extra funding nationwide. It's a bill that's got bipartisan support. And again, if we approve this measure this evening, it shows that our support for Congress to pass the CARES Act. And we did have a little bit of language revisions that I think make this resolution better. Mr. Harris was working on, myself, Mr. Wolferman. So I appreciate that. Hopefully the board can support number 11. And something not on the agenda, but probably more important, we sold the first tranche of bonds today for the construction, the voter-approved referendum from a couple of months back. And again, timing is everything. And we were very fortunate to get a very, very low rate on this first tranche, which is the larger of either the 2 or 3 tranches to come. And it funds the many, many projects, many improvements. Again, voter approved. And by striking today and taking advantage of these rates, the numbers are relatively new. So forgive me if they're not to the dollar, but over the life of this bonding, we could save over $8 million by taking advantage of these rates. And I think it's a result of us working together in a timely manner. We've voted to approve the funding. Obviously, we voted and we all supported the referendum by voting previous months to be ready to bond and to borrow. It allowed us today to sell them. And again, these rates are very favorable. Under 3, I think 2.14. I may turn it over to Mr. Wolferman to give us some more. That is correct. Yeah, 2.14?
Correct.
Yeah, that's an amazing rate for this large amount of money. Again, over the life of this loan, and we'll work on the numbers over the near future, could save upwards of $8 million with all of these projects. And I think it's a direct result of the board acting expeditiously. It's a testament to the fiscal health and the financial responsibility of not just the board, certainly Mayor McCormick and the township. And I think we will be we're gonna benefit greatly from selling these bonds today. So I appreciate this. It's not on the agenda. Again, we've led up to this by approving the borrowing in previous months. But I think it's a great thing for the district. And it's a busy summer, folks. Guys are doing a tremendous job with the Equity Commission, the reentry plan, and now we're borrowing $50 million for voter-approved projects. I hope we all and everybody appreciates that it is a busy summer, and I appreciate the work everybody's been doing this summer to get these very important matters done and done successfully. With that, that is my time, Mr. President. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Tamburello. Are there any comments or questions from the board at this time? Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Tamburello. It was seconded by Mr. Treeweiser. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Harris? Mr. Harris?
He's muted.
No worries. Oh, I lost Mr. Harris again.
Mr. Harris, you're muted.
Here you go.
Yes, I am voting
Thank
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
And Mr. Delapietro?
Yes. Okay, security and school safety agenda, Mr. Treeweiser.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Security and School Safety Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, presents the following one item. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Treeweiser. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Anderson. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
And Mr. Delapietro?
Yes. Okay, moving on to technology, Mr. Sedana.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Technology Committee, on the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, presents the following two items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Sedana. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Borden. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
Mr. President,
Mr. Sedana?
I just want to commend Mr. Bader and Dr. Zega on getting a really, if you look at item number 2, those are the new Chromebooks coming in. And I think a good amount of due diligence went into finding the right device. And one of the things that is part of this contract, I guess, maybe I'm not using the right language, but it allows the device to be fixed multiple times under the warranty. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's a valuable service for our district to have for devices. So I'd like to commend everyone who put this together, because it's, you know, initially it used to be, the warranty covered only a certain amount of breakage, but now we've gotten a good deal with these Chromebooks, as well as the warranty that covers multiple breakages and with no cost to the district beyond what we're paying right now. So I think it's a very responsible way of buying tech.
Okay. Are there
Thank you, everyone involved.
Are there any comments or questions from the board at this time?
Delapietro?
Mr. Harris?
I'm going to highlight that same item that Mr. Sedana highlighted, of that money that came from the cost of those 1,100 Chromebooks for the ninth graders, and they are top of the line and a great product that they're afforded to us by the federal government. It's part of the CARES Act of $1.4 million that we've received from the federal government as part of the CARES Act. So we're very appreciative of that money, and I know that the balance of that money, of the money that's appropriated for technology from the CARES Act, will also go toward, helping other students make sure that, the likelihood that we will be remote in some capacity, God help us, full-time capacity at some point if we do have a second wave, the students will be fully equipped with on a one-to-one basis and have a MiFi for wireless access as well. So I want to commend the administration for taking the bull by the horns, recognizing the opportunity, and use that money wisely to prepare ourselves. COVID, no COVID, we're in a better position from a technology standpoint. So thank you very much.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Sedana, seconded by Ms. Borden. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello? Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
And Mr. Delapietro?
Yes. Okay, buildings and ground agenda, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Buildings and Grounds Committee, Superintendent of Schools, and Administrator Board Secretary present the following 4 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Treeweiser. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
Board President?
Mr. Tamburello?
On item number 4, I want to thank a few folks that I got to work with over the past 2 weeks in assisting with this item. Certainly, Mr. Wolferman and his office on this is a construction administrator, more like a project manager, a site inspector for these major projects, construction projects we have going on. But we were assisted greatly in this. Chris Costi with Township helped on this one, and give a shout out to Dave Wydell in our business office for assisting as well. This is another item. We're just chock full of savings this evening. This is another one that's going to save the district some money. Going with a third-party construction manager for the large projects. I know it was important to the Buildings and Grounds Committee. It's important to the board. And going this route, and we're going to request proposals for a different bundle of projects by August. By going this route this evening, it's another significant savings. I'd say, again, not to the dollar, but I'd say about probably over $100,000 in savings by going this route this evening and creating another package and bundling other projects for another RFP coming in August. So appreciate the item, appreciate the B&G committee and all of those that helped over the past couple of weeks in making this decision, if the board so chooses. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Tamburello. Are there any comments or questions from the board at this time? Okay. Seeing none, I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Harris, seconded by Mr. Treeweiser. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
And Mr. Della Pietro.
Yes. Okay, personnel agenda, Mr. Treeweiser.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Personnel Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, presents the following 22 items. I move the adoption of the foregoing.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Treeweiser. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
Mr. Della Pietro.
Mr. Bush, do you have any recommendations for us tonight?
None at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there any old business that should be brought to the attention of the board? No old business? Okay, seeing none. Is there any new business that should be brought to the attention of the board?
Mr. Del Pietro?
Mr. Harris?
I couldn't go without giving a shout out tonight, but it's a most deserved to Ms. Anderson and the Equity Committee and the administration for the level of responsiveness that we've seen over the month from the last couple of meetings. A cry for a response from members of the community, former students, current students, and concerned citizens. Want to commend them as well for bringing to light the importance of many of those issues. This is how our democracy is supposed to work. We, the 9 of us, we represent the community. We love when people come to the board meetings and tell us what they're thinking. So commending the community for voicing their concerns. And of course, on the receiving end, I'd like to think we're doing our jobs up here best we can. So kudos to the Equity Committee and the administration for taking those concerns and putting them to action, as Dr. Zega said. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harris. Any other new business? Okay, I just have a couple of things. First, I'd like to thank all the committees, all the chairs of the committees. You guys have been burning the midnight oil, working through your summer, working on vacation. We have a very busy agenda. it's just there's a lot going on. Dr. Zega, you and your team putting this reentry committee together. I've been following the emails, down to our principals, down to our teachers. A lot of positive feedback, a lot of pros and cons. Good luck in that decision-making process. The difference between the elementaries and the middle schools and the high schools, with lunches and stuff. So you definitely have a very busy agenda. The emails are coming in at, all hours of the night. So all our staff, all our employees are heavily engaged. So my thank yous all for, working through summer. Obviously we put a great team together. We're getting a lot of positive things done. I'd also like to congratulate all the graduating seniors from Colonia, Woodbridge, and Kennedy. We were able to make that happen. I thank Dr. Massimino, Brian Small, Dr. Zega for everyone's help putting that together. That was a big endeavor. We worked on that for months, had many different plans. We got that behind us now, so we're going to move forward. So I just thank everybody, for stepping up and going 110%. I don't think you could ask for a better group of individuals to tackle the problems that have been presented to us. So, again, from the board president, I can't thank you enough. Is there any other new business? Okay. Seeing none, in keeping with our past practice, we will open this portion of our meeting for questions and comments from the public. If you wish to say something, please call 732-602-8472 or 732-602-8550. When prompted, please provide your name, the section of the township in which you reside, and please limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes in accordance with regulation 1100D. I will not answer any questions until you have completed your 5 minutes to allow you full opportunity to say what you need to say so as to not to interrupt your time.
Hello, caller. State your name and where you reside.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kiana from Avenel.
Okay. Can you just turn your computer down because there's a delay? The sound.
Yes. Okay.
And then go ahead.
Hello?
Hello. Go ahead.
Yes. While I'm very pleased to see that the Equity and Action Plan is being stated in the district, which is long overdue, but I'm very excited for the plan. I would like to know, how are we making diversity a priority in regards to our teaching staff? On njspotlight.com, the data shows that there is 93% white staff, and we have 65% non-white students in our district. So I'm very concerned about how are we making diversity a priority when it comes to the teaching staff. How are we recruiting and retaining teachers of color to work in Woodbridge Township schools? There are quite a few parents that I've spoken with that their children have not had one teacher of color in their entire time that they have been in the school. I know my children have attended Colonia Middle School, not one African-American teacher there. Another friend of mine at Morby Street School, not one African-American teacher there. Masonic, not one African-American teacher there. And the list goes on. There might be one, two, or most schools have no African-American teachers in the district. So I'm very concerned about that. it's very important that we have teachers of color in every single school in the district. So I would like to know what is being done to recruit and retain teachers of color in Woodbridge Township Public Schools. Thank you.
Dr. Zega, do you?
Sure, Mr. President. One of the things that Dr. Massimino has taken on in our Human Resources Department is actively going to especially local schools and going to job fairs and doing in-person recruitment so that we can make sure that we do recruit candidates of color. The staff that we have who are already with us, we want to make sure that they stay with us, and we want to make sure that we give them every opportunity to develop professionally. You're right. There is and we talked about equity metrics, and one of the large glaring inequalities is the racial makeup of the staff compared to the racial makeup of the students in each school, and that's without exception in every school. And that's something that we know that we have to deal with, and we are actively trying to recruit all people of all races so that we can get to that point where the staff is a representation of the community. Unfortunately, that's going to take a while. And unfortunately, we're in a situation now where I know we just hired a couple dozen people, but we're at the point where we're not hiring as much as we would have because of budget constraints and anticipated budget shortfalls. So while we are recruiting, and we are actively recruiting people of color, and we are certainly aware of our staff, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, because we have students of color who go through the entire 13 years of education and never have a teacher of color, and that's not right. So to answer your question, we are actively recruiting. HR is going out and seeing people in person. One of the constraints here on a job application, the rate, putting your race is optional. It's always optional. So since all of our applications are online, it's tough to tell the race of the applicant, which is why we want to do more in-person interviews and in-person recruitment. So you are absolutely right, and we're, as you were talking, I was taking notes, and we will be adding that to one of the priorities of our Equity Commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any more callers?
Hello, caller. Please state your name and the town you reside.
Hi there. My name is Lee Darden. I'm in Avenel, New Jersey. How are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I am so awesome. And I just wanted to start off by saying I just want to thank the board for really listening to the concerns of the parents at the last meeting and coming to this meeting with a plan. I'm just so thankful for that. Just another statement. I recently learned that Brian Small is head of security for the schools. And I just wanted to voice my concern about that, because based on his behavior towards people of color at the town hall meetings, I'm not so sure that he's not biased towards children of color. I mean, and I just think that should be looked into. I don't feel comfortable with him being in charge of security over kids of color, especially with the way he behaves at town hall meetings. Okay, my third thing is just a question. I wanted to know if there was a plan in place to address racism and explicitly teach anti-racist behavior in the curriculum, and if so, how will this be achieved in the elementary, middle, and high school level? And that's it. That's all I have. Just a question.
Okay. Doc, you want to?
Yeah, Mr. President, Mr. President, can I just say we cannot, obviously, we're not going to address personnel matters other than
Oh, no problem.
obviously.
The answer to my question.
Yep. I just want to make sure that the board understands that it's harder when we're not in person. I hope you understand that. Thank you.
No problem.
Sure, Mr. President. Kohler, I don't know if you saw the beginning of the board meeting, but we had an extensive presentation that will be on the website tomorrow. But we are.
So there is a plan. Okay.
Yes, we are revising our curriculum. We're looking at different areas, especially in the secondary, middle, and high school. We're looking at different courses and actually looking at making courses mandatory in ethnic studies as a graduation requirement.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
To the board president,
Mr. Tamburello.
I have to say, members of the public, to just throw out names of employees with disparaging comments, I think is counterproductive. I don't know what the young lady previously was talking about with regards to our coordinator of security, but I certainly think doing that in a public forum, again, is counterproductive. Again, not knowing what she's talking about, I believe that is whatever she said, that was an incorrect statement to our coordinator of security, and I certainly don't approve of the public throwing names out, making allegations that are unfounded, and hopefully we can refrain from that. Thank you, Mr. President.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day.
Hello, Kohler. Please state your name and your town.
Good evening. This is Craig Cintron. I live in Colonia. Thank you very much for taking the call and offering some guidance on what's going on lately in the community. I wanted to first thank the Technology Committee for the new website for the Township. It looks great, and I'm thankful that it's actually mobile friendly. I see that it cascaded recently to the schools, and I hope that it cascades to the teachers' pages as well. And I just wanted to thank Mrs. Bear last night for the conversation and answering the multitude of questions that were in the chat during the special ed conversation. I have a couple of questions around finance and then also around reentry. The first couple of questions on finance for Mr. Tamburello were, there it looks like on the agenda there's an investment at Chase Bank which appears to be liquid. I was wondering if we're considering moving that elsewhere for a higher rate of interest or renegotiating the current contract that it's under.
Mr. President, obviously, I'm going to defer to Mr. Wolferman, who spends a lot of time on this stuff, but I think we're happy with our bank representation.
Mr. Wolferman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. We do always look, and you are correct that the Chase investment is at a very low interest rate. That used to be in a CD, which earned a high interest rate. CD became liquid because at June 30th, we need it to be liquid. We can't extend over 2 years in a CD. So we made it liquid. Now we're into July, so we'll be looking to reinvest the money. So yes, we are definitely looking to improve that interest rate from Chase.
Excellent, thank you. The second question I had regarding finance was, it sounded like today that we sold the first tranche of bonds post-referendum, which was, again, voter approved. I was curious to know if the property was sold already.
The Avenel property?
Yes, there was a property in conjunction with this referendum that was supposed to be sold prior to the bonds being issued.
The mayor has assured us that there is a deal in place, but the land has not changed hands yet.
So is there a deal that has been consummated and has been signed, or is there a deal that's still being negotiated and has not been finalized?
Mr. Sintra, I'll have to get back to you, but I believe it has been finalized.
Okay, I would love to see a copy of the contract that's there because I was assured by the mayor that it would be sold prior to the bonds being issued, and I do understand that the administration has the ability to issue bonds without it being sold, but in light of the current economic situation and pandemic, that would not be a great decision, in my opinion, along with others. Moving on to one of the other questions I had regarding reentry. I was very curious, based on the conversations that we had last night to hear about some of the things that are being considered. I understand that things are not final, and Dr. Zega, based on your comments earlier, we should hear about what this reentry plan looks like next week. I was curious to know who was involved in the planning for the 20 to 21 school year regarding COVID-19 and putting the right compliance measures in place.
So we formed a committee of administrators. There were some parents, but that committee was broken into subcommittees. The problem is, although I believe some of the subcommittees have met, the plan has changed so many times because of different directives and different interpretations from the state. It really limits, it's limited the amount of public participation. When I say we'll have a plan out next week, what that'll be is a proposal. And we have our community input, and I believe there was approximately 7,000 responses we got to our survey. But when we start to talk about the plan next week with the parents, and we hope to do that in person at different sites throughout town, it will be in the form of a proposal. Now we have to submit our plan to the DOE and get it approved, but much like our school closure plan in the spring, that plan is going to change because the way that the directives are coming out of Trenton, you know, we're changing. We have significant changes to the plan every couple of days. So as a matter of fact, yesterday we had one set of directives at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it was completely a 180 reversal at 6 o'clock at night. So it's not only from day to day, it's within each day that the things are changing. So there were parents on it, there were teachers, there were administrators, but I felt it was more important to kind of get a backbone or at least a proposal out to the parents rather than starting with a blank slate and saying, okay, what does everybody want to do? Because the survey results, which we will make public, they were really all over as far as the entire spectrum of who wanted what. We have a significant portion of our parents who have expressed not wanting to return to school at all in any form of in-person instruction in September. We have another significant percentage of our parents who are adamant about returning to school in some form or fashion in September. Where we constantly get hung up is the 6-foot rule. And there are different guidance from the CDC and the American Association of Pediatrics. They are conflicting directives. One is 6 feet, and one is 3 feet. Now, the one thing that we will guarantee that whatever plan we present to the public, it will have the highest threshold of security, or not security, but safety, health safety for our students. If the CDC says 6 feet and the Pediatric Association says 3 feet, we're going to separate our children and our staff 6 feet. We're not going to minimize in order to either save money or to make it a more convenient plan, because none of that is worth it if any of our students or staff get sick. And just to tell you the magnitude of all this, the state released an estimate of about $480, $490, just under $500 per student to plan on for this undertaking. And that includes PPE, that includes cleaning, and that includes any other things that would be involved. So we have 13,700 students. So 13,700 times 480 is $6.7 million. So it's a tremendous financial investment, and we want to make sure that we get it right. But the finances, the convenience, and even the educational portion of it are secondary to health and safety of our students and staff. So that's why we're being very, very careful as far as what we get out, and we want to make sure that what we do send out, we can defend and will accommodate as many people as possible. Probably the biggest question I've got is about students who are refusing to come to school and what accommodations we will have for them. and we're still developing an answer for that, but we will have an answer. And not only students, but there's some research out there that we could have upwards of 30 to 40% of our teachers who may not choose to come back. So that's another issue. And if it's a very, very complicated problem, and the rules of engagement to solve this problem are constantly changing. So what we present as a proposal to the town and to the board, please realize that we are trying to do the very, very safest plan, not only the most educationally sound plan, but the safest plan.
Well, I very much appreciate all those additional details and the work that you guys are doing. I understand that it's a very fluid situation. I don't envy the situation that all of us are in and what you're trying to do and pull off here. One of my follow-up questions to my earlier question, and you kind of answered a little bit, and you said that there were some parents involved. My question is, how did you source those parents, and are they non-affiliated? And by non-affiliated, I mean they're not a teacher in the district, or they're not administration or staff of the school. And do you have a representation of the teachers who are part of this plan, or the parents who are part of this planning process, that we've got, single parental, houses, we've got two parental houses, we've got people who are working or aren't working, how did you decide on who the parents were, and how did you source volunteers?
To be honest with you, the people who we put on the committee were people who emailed me with questions, and I asked them if they wanted to be on the committee. To be honest with you, I have no idea who they are, but they were parents in the district. So I thought that was a pretty unbiased way of choosing them. But like I said, we have our main committee, and then we also have subcommittees, and there will be greater parent involvement in the subcommittees. And there will also be very, like I said, when I go out and we have our in-person meetings, we'll be presenting a proposal, and we will certainly take in any input and consider any suggestions from the public. One thing I can guarantee you is that we will not make everyone happy. That's the one thing for sure. Whatever plan we present, there will be a group of people who it's not convenient for them, and they'll disagree with it. But as leaders and as the leader of the district and representing the board, we have to make a decision that hopefully is the best for everyone. But like I said, judging from the survey results, when we present our plan, there's going to be a group of parents who are not happy. And that, like you said, it's really difficult, and we're never going to be able to get everybody, but we just can't get everyone in school as much as we'd like. And that's because of that 6-foot rule. If that 6-foot rule were to change to 3 feet, it's a different story. But we just keep getting hung up on the 6-foot rule every time we get kind of down the road on a certain proposal. We just run into that problem. And the other thing too is that was a big issue is cleaning the buses. So our buses are on tiered runs, which means one bus, for example, will pick up a bunch of high school kids, then drop them off, then pick up the middle school kids, then drop them off, and then pick up elementary school kids and drop them off. So now, after the high school students are dropped off, that bus has to be sanitized before it can pick up the next students. So that's anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes to clean the bus. And not just talking wiping it down, but cleaning it sufficiently according to the guidelines of the product and the CDC to make sure that any COVID viruses are killed. So it's a lot more than just wiping it down. So that's a big problem. And as you'll see in the proposal, that's going to cause us to change our start times of our schools a little bit. So there's a whole lot of stuff that in the day-to-day operations, schools by nature are social institutions. They're meant for people to be together. They're meant for adults and children to come together and work in groups and be in contact. And now all of that can't happen. So if you thought closing the schools and sending everybody home and learning how to teach digitally was hard, this is exponentially harder. because now we have to figure out a way to bring them back. But we have a great team, and we will have a proposal together. And as parents, you know, if anybody submits any comments that we think we can make happen or will improve our plan, we'll certainly take them under consideration. But like I said, we hope to get that out next week.
Thank you, Dr. Zega. I want to be respectful of others' time on the call, and perhaps when you send out the first proposal, maybe we could ask for some volunteers
Sure.
to take part in the various subcommittees. And lastly, I just want to thank Mr. Harris for your responses on Facebook and social media and responding to us pretty quickly. Thanks again to the entire board. Hope that you guys have a great night.
Thank you.
If I can, Mr. President, I hate to be a wet blanket here, but we got to try to, just to be fair to everyone, we got to make sure that we limit comments to the 5-minute rule that we've set. Dr. Zega's got tons of answers here because he's been working his tail off over the last couple of weeks to get school ready. But just to be fair to every person who speaks, it's especially hard at a Zoom meeting because we don't have the same level of interactivity that we would have if we were all together. But I just want to remind Dr. Zega and our board president about the importance of trying to keep consistency there. Thank you.
Mr. Delapietro?
Mr. Harris.
Just through the chair, two things. Dr. Zega, is there a deadline that the DOE has given the board to submit its reentry plan? You know, for example, August 15th or August 1st. Is there a deadline we have? Just out of curiosity.
The deadline right now is to have the proposal presented to the parents 4 weeks before school starts.
4 weeks.
There's no deadline for the DOE.
Okay.
Although they need to approve the plan, what they've been telling us is they're going to issue a checklist similar to what they did when schools closed of all the things that have to be included in part of our plan. As of yet, we don't have that checklist. So, like I said, if the plan will first go through board review, and then I will submit it as a proposal to the DOE, and then if any changes come out of the parent meetings, then we could always amend it.
Okay.
And I guarantee that's going to happen. We will be amending the plan.
Sure. Understood. And then the second item, Mr. Delapietro, is about the $50 million in borrowed money that Mr. Tamburello highlighted tonight. None of that money will be going towards the Avenel School project. That's the other half of the bonding that we're going to be doing. The $50 million that was sold in bonds yesterday that Mr. Tamburello was highlighting will go towards the expansion onto School 28, School 25, the JFK Field House, the connecting of the pods at School 22, School 24, as well as all the other ancillary security, technology, or capital improvement projects going on throughout the district. So I just wanted to tell Mr. Citron the distinction. We didn't borrow for a project or for a property that we do not yet own. So we just wanted to make that clear this evening.
Okay.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Hello, caller. Please state your name and the town in which you reside.
Hi, good evening. This is Amber Jarrett from Woodbridge proper. I just want to start by saying that I am very encouraged to hear about the equity action plan that the district has developed. I think it's an amazing first step, and I can't express enough how much we appreciate these efforts and just the board's overall willingness to listen to the concerns that have been shared. I am aware that I took the last few meetings speaking at you, and tonight I'm going to spare you my 5-minute monologue, but I did have a question that I posed at the last meeting, which was not able to be answered. I see Dr. Zega is here tonight, and I just want to say before I pose my question that I sincerely hope all is well with his family. At the last meeting, I spoke about the need to conduct an overall assessment of the district's climate and culture as it relates to racial issues in order to specifically pinpoint areas of need for improvement. We have a lot of schools in our district with different racial makeups and different staff, and because of that, there are going to be different needs. And it was our group's hope that the district would use data from such an assessment to create a targeted action plan for reform. I know you've met and spoken to some students, and it's obvious that you've listened to the concerns voiced by the residents who've called in at the last meeting. And like I said, I'm thrilled that the district is moving in this direction and that you've included in your plan that anonymous reporting option. I'd love to hear more about that. But as part of the equity plan, are there additional plans to first explicitly uncover just how pervasive of an issue racial bias and injustice is in our schools, like through the use of surveys or other tools, and then to continually collect feedback about the effectiveness of the plans that you're putting into place? The anonymous reporting option, like I said, I don't know much about it, but it does seem like it provides the opportunity for some feedback, but we think it's important to include additional opportunities for the involvement of all staff, students, and families, kind of like the COVID survey kind of idea. So I guess I'm just wondering, are there steps that have been or are being put in to accomplish this goal?
Mr. President, yes, Ms. Jarrett, one of our first things that we want to do is get an idea of what's going on in each school. The overwhelming input from different people. Obviously, there are some things that we definitely need to address, but a climate survey is certainly something that we can consider moving forward.
Okay. I know, I mean, in my district, I know they partner with third-party groups like Social Justice Matters, and there's another group, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but they're doing like listening tours and anonymous surveys and stuff just to kind of collect more information, because like I said, every school's not going to be the same. And while, I mean, I love the plan. I think it's amazing. There are going to be different needs. So I think it's just important to, yes, pinpoint those and be aware of where more issues may reside than others. So I'm glad to hear that that's a possibility.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay.
Hello, caller. Please state your name and your place of residence.
Hi, my name is Megan Brown. I'm from Colonia. Tonight, last time I called in, I talked about the role of police in schools, which I'm glad to see that you are very serious about addressing, which, you know, is very good. And specific questions I had are how many officers, the SROs versus class 3, you know, whether they are in the schools. And I wrote this before, obviously, you gave your presentation, so I look forward to reading what you've written and what's going to be published. So, secondly, I would like to address the lack of diversity in the teaching staff across the district, specifically at the elementary level. Woodbridge School District has one of the most diverse student bodies in New Jersey. It's in the top 5%, I think. It was one of the main reasons I moved here, actually. A factor that I did not account for in my naivete was the diversity in the staff. I guess I just assumed that a staff would be as reflective of the people they teach. Not that it would have made much of a difference where my kids went to school in New Jersey. Even South Orange Maplewood School District, the #1 most diverse student body in New Jersey, still has a 77% white faculty. The faculty and staff in Woodbridge School District is 92.9% white as of enrollment data from the 2017 to 2018 school year. I would venture a guess that the elementary school staff is close to 100% white. The staff at my daughter's school, number 26 in Seneca, is 100% white women, other than 2 white male specialist teachers. Imagine going through your formative years never having been taught by someone that looks like you. This is the reality for most of our Black and other people of color students. Multiple studies have shown that outcomes are markedly different for those students that have a teacher that looks like them. Studies show that Black students who have a Black teacher, male or female, for at least 1 year in elementary school are less likely to drop out of high school and more likely to consider college. As for our white students, Black and other non-white teachers will benefit them by offering unique perspectives that they would not otherwise find at home, not to mention being
Did we lose her, Doc?
Can you hear me?
Sorry. Good. Sorry, go ahead.
No, the last thing I was going to say is that I did a brief search online and found that there's a recruiting firm in New Jersey that specializes in assisting schools and organizations in the recruitment and retention of diverse teachers. So there are resources out there, and I hope that you will use them in the coming years. So thank you. I need to, fortunately, need to attend to bedtime duties for my children, so I do need to take my take your responses off the microphone. I'll look at them tomorrow. So thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So regarding the officers, we don't have SROs. We have off-duty police officers, and we are repurposing them. We're not reducing them or adding to their numbers or their daily hours. What we are doing is repurposing and changing their duties so that they're in the schools with the students much less. And as far as our staff, yes, we understand. We are addressing it. We are addressing it as best we can. We are fully aware of the disparity between the racial makeup of our staff and the racial makeup of our students in our community. But we are working on it. We're actively recruiting teachers of color, and we're retaining all of the ones that we can employ. Thank you.
That's what the Equity Commission is empowered to do, to address those issues. So there'll be more coming out, with the Equity Commission.
Yeah, can I just say something? And I think that's what you hit a really good point, Mr. President. If I could just mention something, the Equity Commission is designed to address a lot of these issues. I mean, this is new for everyone. I mean, this issue has hit this community like many hard, and I think the board came to the realization that this commission was essential so that it can begin to address not just one or two or three issues, but many issues. And so the concept here is continued growth. And to do that, I think the commission needs to really take a lot of these issues under advisement. But, I'll just tell this as a school board attorney who does this throughout the state of New Jersey. This is one of the, this is obviously one of the first boards to really do this in a comprehensive way. So I'll just tell you, just to sort of add that perspective. And I think from a commission standpoint, one of the key things that obviously you'll be charged with addressing is general employment issues. And obviously you cannot use race as a qualification for hiring or not hiring someone. That could lead ultimately to something, potential accusations of discrimination. But you can certainly commit as a district to an overall improvement in recruitment and doing what you can to eventually make it so that your district reflects your community. So there's a way to do one without the other, and I think the superintendent and the board know that. But this is not easy stuff, especially when the laws get in the way and all the obstacles, like for example the fact that turning over an entire teaching staff and staff in the school district takes time. So not that that's what's happening here, but just this is going to take some work. And I hope that not just the members of the public, but the board understands just how long all this work is going to take to actually come to fruition. But, it's certainly a great first step.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Any more callers, Doc?
Yes. Just
okay.
Hang on. They just bounced back. Hello, caller. Please state your name and the town in which you reside.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is James Dabrowski, and I reside in Woodbridge proper. How's everybody doing tonight?
Very well, thank you.
All right. So, I want to say I grew up in the went to Avenel 5, Avenel Middle, Colonia High School, and this is so long overdue. I'm very thrilled at the decision. I want to give kudos to the Equity Committee. and to the board and central administration for their support in getting this great first step done. Yeah, I also want to say, I think it was brave of Lee to come forward and mention Mr. Small's name, and I think it was a little counterproductive of Mr. Tamburello to call her comments counterproductive. We're talking about equity, anti-racism, and we got to start being upstanders, not bystanders. She stood up and she saw something that was wrong. On March 3rd, Mr. Small literally turned his back to myself and my black friend, Kason Little, as we presented to the council at the March 3rd meeting. Corey Spiller did the same. You can see it on YouTube. It's proof. It's not unfounded. It's factual. And then at the June 23rd meeting, when our black students, the Woodbridge Youth for Liberation and Equity organization, when they were presenting their concerns with racism in Woodbridge, Mr. Small again said, literally, quote unquote, you can watch this on YouTube, don't listen to the public. And I think that's very irresponsible for someone to say who's the head of our security. I wonder what his opinions are towards our black students and towards our undocumented students, considering the resolution we were trying to get passed on March 3rd was in support of our undocumented residents who don't feel seen, safe, or supported at all right now, as with many of our other marginalized and vulnerable community members. So I wanted to address that. And also, last but not least, I want to ask, please, can you support us in getting the Woodbridge Council and Mayor on board with the commitment to anti-racism, because they have been less than cooperative, and we could really use your support as community members to get them to see that this is best for everybody. It's not an attack on any group. It's including groups who have felt left out and are being left out forever. So we really need your support in getting the town council and the mayor on board, because the kids get this great anti-racism education at school for 6 hours, but then they go back into the community where all that's being negated by leadership who won't take a stand. That's counterproductive. We really need to get all hands on deck. We need to get all our community members on board with this. And yeah, there'll be pushback. There always has been with social justice movements. You always get the backlash. It's, we call it white lash, the angry, predominantly white people who think they're being attacked. And when you're used to privilege, equality can feel like oppression, but it's not. It's equality, it's equity, it's fairness. And we need to start really just committing ourselves to that and holding ourselves accountable. It's not just about pointing fingers and holding Brian Small accountable, Corey Spiller accountable. I've got to hold myself accountable. I make mistakes all the time. Sometimes I catch it myself. Sometimes somebody who sees it and I don't. I have a lot of racist blind spots. I'm a white man in a white supremacist society. I inevitably have many racist blind spots. As Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, one of the premier scholars on anti-racism, says, you can't expect to live in a racist society when you're getting racist ideas rained on you all day long and not get wet. We're all like swimming in an ocean of racism. So it's going to take a lot of work holding ourselves accountable and holding each other accountable. It doesn't always have to be considered an attack. It can be a call in, it can be a call out, and both are necessary. So I think that was counterproductive to say not to hold people accountable. We definitely have to hold one another accountable if we ever expect to move forward. And that's the goal I hope all of us have, to move forward not only as a school district, but as a community, as a state, as a nation. So we really got to work together, and I really hope we can count on your support to getting our elected officials down at Town Hall on board with this, because as I said, we've gotten a lot of pushback, and we really could use our leaders in education to stand up for our students and work with us in getting them on board, being upstanders, not bystanders. We're quick to tell our students, be an upstander. I'm a teacher in Perth Amboy. We actually have an upstander award, where we award a student who we catch in the act of standing up against injustice, usually bullying. But we got to remember, white supremacy is the ultimate bully in our white supremacist society. Okay, so if we could all stand up against that, it would really send a message to our students that it's not just about, talking the talk, but we're walking the walk, and we're setting the example that we want them to follow. So my wife's telling me I'm going on and on, so thank you so much for listening, and I hope you really take all this into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more callers, Doc? Okay.
Hello, caller. Please state your name and where you reside.
Hi, this is Anjali Holt. I'm calling from Woodbridge proper. How's everybody doing?
Good, thank you.
Hi. I just want to say thank you guys so much. I was actually a little shocked and emotional to see the presentation and all of your hard work. And it's probably the first time in the last several weeks, if not months, that our family, our group of parents that we've organized have felt like our leaders are listening to us. So I'm so happy that you guys are taking the steps forward. Obviously, you know that we're still going to be right there, making sure that, you know, our kids are taken care of and holding you all accountable. But I really do, you guys have renewed my faith. As the last callers have mentioned, we've had a lot of trouble trying to get some of these issues across to the board as well with the council. So thank you so much. And I'm hoping that you also share that data if you are doing the assessment, which I think is very important. We do need to assess our cultural climate in the schools as well as the town. Some of the things that we've seen online with the recent instances of blackface and racial statement, actually threats of violence towards some of our youth in the community who are out here peacefully protesting. You know, there's just been so many things. So everything that you're doing is wonderful, but I think that assessment is so needed to just really know where everybody's at and what type of counseling and resources that we need to get to these kids, and to let them know to trust you, because some of these kids do not have a lot of white people that they trust, to be honest with you. We've been reaching out to a lot of them and just slowly earning their trust and letting them know that they can talk to us about this and, you know, that we are going to support them. So thank you so much for everything you're doing. I know that you said that you're doing the anonymous reporting of the racial incidents, which I think is beautiful. I think that's great. I'm just wondering, we had talked about it a little bit. Mr. Massimino didn't really get to address it, but like how you do the bullying reports, like where there's a paper trail and the parents are informed and there's a committee that reviews it. I'm just hoping that you'll also go along those lines so that we know that it's being handled and not just reported and going into an inbox. Not that you won't, I'm just saying in my mind, I think that's very important. And a little bit off the topic with the racism, but I was just wondering, I know currently our sex education course seems to be focusing mainly on STD and pregnancy prevention. I think it's also imperative that the youth are learning about healthy relationships and issues such as consent. So I'm wondering if you guys know anything about that curriculum, if you guys are going along those lines. And basically that's all.
Okay, thank you. I believe the question, the last question you brought up, the last topic you brought up, I believe that's covered in the health curriculum.
Right.
Okay.
And, Dr. Zega, through the chair, Ms. Delbisher.
Ms. Harrison.
Thank you. Sorry, get excited there. I know there's 2 specific weeks over the course of the year. One of them is Dating Violence Awareness Week, if I'm not mistaken. I think that falls in February, kind of paired up with Valentine's Day week, as you would have it. And the guidance counselors with the SAC counselors in the schools on an age-appropriate manner are responsible for doing some kind of programming in the schools, particularly on the area of healthy relationships and dating and things of that nature. So wanted to highlight that. That's a state mandate. It's a state law that school districts do participate. And I know we recognize that every year. And I have spoken personally with guidance counselors and SAC counselors who have told me about some of the programming that they do, particularly at the high school level, where dating, as you would imagine, starts to take root. Or I know middle schoolers say they go out, but that's more prominent at the high school level, as we all remember.
Okay.
Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bader?
I just wanted to mention for Ms. Holt that we are currently working on Aaron's Law, which is a supplement in all the, as Dr. Zega said, the health curriculum that is sexual abuse prevention that will be going in every health curriculum. So that area will be beefed up come September.
Thank you, Mr. Bader.
Any more?
Is there any more callers, Doc?
Yes. Hello, caller. Please state your name and the area in which you reside.
Sure. It's David Pinkowitz from Islin. I first wanted to follow up on comments from a few of the previous callers and also the board attorney's comments regarding the hiring of staff and administration and faculty. There was a caller a few months ago that mentioned, and I wanted to second that, where the district often prefers to hire those with some connection to Woodbridge Township, which, you know, if we're trying to promote diversity and make sure we're attracting people from across the board, we should prefer to hire the best staff, but we shouldn't prefer to hire staff only with a connection to the district, or prefer to hire staff with a connection to the district. So as part of seeking out, you know, further representation of different ethnicities and different races, we definitely should, you know, not limit ourselves to Woodbridge Township. And I have a feeling that if we start hiring people more often without connection, we'll attract more people to apply. So that might help in recruiting some of these people. I wanted to talk about next regarding the reopening of the schools. So I have some concerns with any of the proposed plans, especially as concerns the high schools. Like the younger grades, where students have their own individual schedules. In high school grades, they have their own individual schedules. In the younger grades, it's less of a concern. In elementary, in theory, a teacher can change classrooms. In middle school, with slight variations to the way the classrooms are assigned, the same could probably occur. But in high school, that can't occur. I mean, kids go to completely different classes from their friends over the course of the day and the year. And as could be plainly visible in social networking photos after graduation, it's clear that many students don't socially distance or wear masks when given the opportunity to get together, which obviously impacts, even if that doesn't happen within the classroom, it does impact those who are in the classroom. So, in the case of the in-person part of the instruction, asymptomatic individuals can cause a spread when they're basically in the same indoor classroom with the same people over a long period of time. And just 6 feet of distance may not assure safety in that environment with, basically limited circulation of air, et cetera. So I think, combine that with the district's emphasis on the return to athletics that I've seen over the last few days, as well as other extracurricular activities where close contact may occur. I think the administration needs to take a good close look at what the risks are, whether they are worth it, especially for optional activities, and what will happen if someone is COVID positive, especially if it is a teacher, who will need to self-quarantine, and, if that were to occur. One other concern is fairness to students taking high school classes online versus in person. It's vital that those classes be transmitted. In my opinion, it's vital that those classes that occur in person also be transmitted to online simultaneous with the in-person component to allow all students in the class to interact with the teacher when necessary and learn the same as those in class. And to accommodate those who cannot participate live, because I know the state also wanted asynchronous attendance if possible, I would just encourage the administration to make sure these classroom sessions are recorded, at least for a short period of time. Not the store forever, but enough time where those who can't go on the same schedule could watch them. The next, so that's my comment regarding the reopening. Last, I just have a few questions, which I guess are more directed at the board attorney, although I don't even see his face. Oh, there he is. The closed session statement referred to the equity plan, which I believe was a presentation you made. It might have been talking about something else. If it was, please let me know. But what justification in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act did allow that discussion to happen in closed session, as I couldn't figure out which exemption applied to make that a closed session item. And then the second question, also related, it was kind of an implication of the superintendent earlier on in the meeting, that the reopening plan or the reentry plan will be shown to the board tomorrow. The only question I have is just the board simply receiving a copy of the plan, since I assume any meeting of the full board to discuss the plan at the same time would require the public to be invited. So I just wanted to find out answers to that. Thanks.
Mr. President.
Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Pickens.
Yes. Just to address, the board received attorney-client advice regarding the efficacy of the commission. There's a number of legal questions that they had for me, which is protected by the privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Bush.
Next caller. Hello, caller. Please state your name and the town in which you reside.
Patricia Lee, Avenel.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I have a question about going back to school. Right now, there's no plan in place, but when we do go back to school, when these kids are getting on the bus, they're saying take their temperature, take their temperature. Are you going to distribute thermometers to all the buses? Because parents send their kids to school sick. And I want to make sure someone who's sick is not getting on the bus with my niece and my nephew. How do we go about doing this?
Through the chair, Mr. President, that is a really tough question. There is practically no way to make sure that sick children don't come to school. The studies have shown that even when children, especially elementary school children, are infected with COVID, many times they're asymptomatic. So even if they are currently ill, there's a chance that they won't have a temperature. So taking temperatures as a screening measure is not 100% reliable. As a matter of fact, it's much less reliable than people think.
But you have parents all year that are sending their kids to school sick. There's no way for us to know if this child getting on the bus after my niece or my nephew is sick. And, I don't want this to get spread because you have parents all year that send these kids to school sick. How are we going to make sure that these children are not bringing COVID?
Well, to be honest with you, we cannot. But what we can do is ask our parents and our community to work with us and make sure that they don't send their children to school. It's one thing to send your children to school with a cold or even with strep throat, but we're talking about a disease here that could be life or death. So in this particular case, we are absolutely going to have to reach out to our community and ask our community to help us, because the screening process using temperature checks, as I said, it's not reliable, and in many cases will allow students to gather, and they will be within less than 6 feet from each other as they're waiting in line to get on the bus. And then the other issue is we can't put a nurse on every bus. So whatever staff member would be on the bus taking the temperatures is obviously not a healthcare professional. So we don't want those students to be screened by someone who is not trained or is not a healthcare professional. So it's a very difficult problem, which is why we've been struggling with this for a while. Do you have any other questions?
I'm really concerned about putting my niece and my nephew on the bus if you're not going to make sure the children who are getting on the bus are not sick. And I mean, I don't know how you're going to do this. And if a child, God forbid, goes to school and passes this to another child, you're going to have a serious problem, because the little kids, the elementary school kids, are not gonna social distance. I mean, unless you have cattle prods, they're not gonna social distance. They're going to congregate. So how are you protecting our children if you're not checking to make sure people aren't sick?
I want you to finish your statement so I can answer all of your questions at the end. Is that your final question?
Yeah, I'm just worried about putting the kids on the bus with not knowing if someone's sick on the bus. There's no screening when these children get on the bus.
We're all concerned. The issue is we've been mandated by our state government to open schools. And to open schools, that'll mean transporting students. So we have to transport them. And it is very problematic to try and screen the students before they get on the bus. It's a big problem.
And can I just say something? This is not just obviously a Woodbridge issue. This is a statewide issue. So every single school district has the same concern, has the same issue. Any school district that's required to transport their kids to school has the same issue and concern. And you just have to continue to await the guidance from the state, which is, going to be provided, updated we've seen even every day at this point. And so, we're still 6 weeks out, which is not a long time, but in this world, 6 weeks is like, 6 years in the education law realm. So I think it's fair for any parent to be concerned about that. But I could just, as the board's attorney, and Bob, you could tell me, Dr. Zega, correct me if this is wrong, but the board is very concerned about this as well, and will do everything it can, but it has to be within the requirements issued by the state.
All right, well, that was my concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any more callers?
Yes, sir. Hello, caller. Please state your name and the town in which you reside.
Hi, my name is Ikmat Ibrahim. I reside in Woodbridge, New Jersey. I have a couple of questions for you. So when you guys were talking about the Equity Commission, who is on this Equity Commission? Because I feel like the only people that should be on this Equity Commission should be Black and brown residents. I'm sorry, but white people do not understand the underlying racism that goes on in this town. So for you to combat these issues, it needs to be Black and brown residents in this town.
You want to know who's on? Can you just finish all your comments so I don't take up your time, and we'll answer all your questions at the end.
Okay. And my second question is, who will be this equity officer? What race are you narrowing it down to? And my last question is, why do you say all racist incidents are a private matter when it's been brought to public attention? I'm not even saying to publicly address these names, but at least send out a statement in email form or whatever, generally saying that you will be handling this incident, because families don't know what you're doing. Like my mom, she's a parent of a student in the Woodbridge Township School District. She doesn't know what's going on with these incidents. She doesn't know what's getting handled. She just thinks that Woodbridge Township is doing a poor job, which is true. Your silence in these discussions are very counterproductive when thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's all.
Okay, thank you. So through the chair, the committee members are represented on the slide that we presented earlier in the meeting, and that presentation will be on the board website, on the district website tomorrow. And we do have people of color on that committee, or on that.
Is there white people on the committee?
Yes.
They shouldn't be on the committee. I'm just saying that right now.
Okay.
I know there's people that will agree with me that they should be on that committee.
Yeah. Ms. Anderson.
So the Equity Commission is the board committee. So the board committee makes.
Ms. Anderson, your volume cut out. Is she muted? I'm not getting.
No.
Okay.
Just a bit.
We should have a diverse amount of people on the committee in order for us to be able to have a forum for those issues to be discussed.
Those issues should be discussed with the Board of Education. I'm saying that the equity committee should be black and brown. It should not be with white people. You're supposed to be coming up with those discussions between yourselves, and then you address it to the Board of Education. Then you address it to the public. How can you? Those discussions should not just be happening between the equity committee. It should be happening with the Board of Education after you discuss what you have to discuss.
The Equity Commission is is a committee of the Board of Education.
Okay. Can you guys answer my next questions though? Who will be the equity officer? Who will be the equity officer? What race are you narrowing it down to? And
we're looking at someone for color.
When they've been brought to.
But the diversity, the Officer of Diversity and Equity, we're looking at someone who is African American.
Okay, thank you. And then what's the next question? And we need an answer for that question. Why don't you guys, if it's a private matter, I got it, it's a private matter, but in some way it needs to be addressed to the public because we don't know what's going on.
Private matter, as far as what?
Racist incidents that happen.
With who?
Can I just say, this is a legal issue. I mean, the board has to be careful here. I appreciate the residents' comments here, but the board I've had conversations with these board members before about the fact that the board members want to discuss publicly some of these matters, but they're prohibited from doing so because they're student matters. Or they're, for example, potential personnel matters. So the issue we have here is that the board has a lot of rules and laws that it has to follow to protect student, for example, and employee privacy. So yes, even if names aren't used, if you describe the school or if you describe the specific incident, you're still providing a situation where there's identifiable information. So that's the reason legally that they can't do it. I know there are times when the board wants to discuss it, but they're prohibited from doing so. And there are severe consequences if they breach that.
I'm not talking about the Board of Education. I'm talking about the school itself.
The schools are the same. The schools serve the Board of Education. The schools have the rules that I'm talking about. They apply to the schools. The Board of Education is the governing body. But when I say the board, I'm referring to the board and all of its entities, including the schools.
If they're right, because there's no way that my college could do it, that Rutgers University could do it, but a school district in Woodbridge cannot do it. It doesn't make sense how they could address it when they're the state university, but you guys can't do it. It doesn't make sense. So I want to see where is it said in the state. Actually, matter of fact, I'll do the searching myself. Thank you. Have a good night, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay.
Next caller.
Next caller. Good evening, caller. Please state your name and the town in which you reside.
Rhonda Underwood, George.
They can't do it. I know there are times when the board.
Can you please turn your computer volume down?
Oh yeah. Sorry, I was listening to them talk. Sorry, but
It's on a little delay.
Yeah, I was trying to catch what they were saying. Rhonda Underwood, Ford.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Wait, the other guy is still talking. Okay. All right. I'm calling in regards to the students returning back to school. My concern is that it's not a good idea. I did participate in the survey, and they had one situation where it was like every 3 days thing. The students would change and come in on a different day.
which was the half a day, which I think is going to be very chaotic for students and especially for young children. Then there is also the option of them coming in once a week, and then they're stating that they're going to be cleaning the classrooms. I feel that this is just not a good idea. I'm definitely one of those parents where I'm going to decide that I probably won't be sending my child back to school because this is not beneficial to the children. If the board or if the administrators are meeting remotely for meetings, why would we jeopardize our children by putting them in the classroom or putting them on buses to allow them to go to school? Another thing that I wanted to bring up is why can't teachers teach remotely from home or wherever they're at and keep their normal schedule where they can have, if class is for an hour, they can have their hour session and do a virtual classroom where it's live and the students can still partake and get their lessons. And also too, if the students have questions or if the students have concerns, because for a lot of students, sometimes when the assignments are put out there or different instruction is put out there, it's not fully understanding for the students, and they're missing out on parts of the assignment, and then their grades are being affected. And I work at a university, and the university I work at, they're not even going back to school. So if students that are adults are not going back to school and are remaining in remote classrooms, why would we jeopardize our young children and send them back into the classroom? Because I know you all said that you're going to have the classrooms clean, but who's going to be cleaning these classrooms? Because half the times you go into schools and the janitors are cleaning the classrooms and they're still dirty. So that was my main concerns, because are they going to have an option also for students to be able to just work remotely? That was it for right now.
Okay, thank you. I'll let you go and we'll answer your questions, okay?
No, I'm still here. I will stay on while you guys answer the questions, just in case I had something else to ask. Is that okay?
It should be, yeah.
So
go ahead.
So we have, our concerns are the same as yours, which is why this is taking so long. But to answer, the facts are that the governor of New Jersey has ordered all public schools in New Jersey to open in some fashion and provide in-person learning for students, for every student, K to 12. And that's what we are compelled to do. And that's what we're working on. We understand that there are concerns, safety concerns, and valid safety concerns that parents have, and we're trying to come up with a plan that will accommodate everybody's concern. But as you can imagine, there are a wide variety of concerns. But as I said before, the plan that we'll put forward and the proposal that we have is based on student safety above all else, even above their instruction. The student safety is the highest priority. And as we meet with the public and we discuss the plan at meetings, I'd be happy to answer all of your questions.
Okay, because I mean, I know that you guys are trying to make sure that the students are safe, and I know the government has to go by whatever the standards they need to go by in order to get their funding, because the federal government is threatening to cut people's funding, which is ridiculous. But, you know, it's just very heartbreaking to know that they're trying to send our children back into the classroom. Kids are not going to stay 6 feet apart, and especially in the elementary school. And then even in the middle school, kids are going to be they're going to be touching each other. They're going to meet up with each other. And it's so scary, because if they get sick or if they get COVID and they don't get sick and they bring it home to their family or their parents, this is just going to create chaos again. And then what are we going to do? Back locked in our homes again and doing remote classrooms anyway?
So I thank you for your comments. Your time is up.
Okay.
But if you have any other questions, just call my office.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next caller. Hello, caller. Please state your name and where you reside in town.
Hi, my name is Charity. I'm from Seymour, New Jersey.
Hi, Charity.
Oh, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, can I start?
Sure.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. One, how do y'all, ensure that curriculum is being taught? Because you just mentioned in the previous call that someone talked about sexual health education. We're talking about how they have talk about sexual violence and dating violence and healthy relationships that happens in February. As a former student of Woodbridge High School, I can tell you that never happened. My second question is, how is the district working to be inclusive of gender nonconforming, non-binary, and trans students? In particular, when it comes to bathrooms, I feel like there needs to be more gender neutral bathrooms in these schools. My next question is about disciplinary action. I want to know if the township is doing more research about how Black students are disproportionately affected by disciplinary action within the district. Like the group that I'm in, Wild, we have already done some, information and looking at it. And in, Woodbridge Township School District, Black students only make up 11.3% of student enrollment, but 26.9% of in-school suspensions and 27.8% out-of-school suspensions. So those proportions are just not adding up and, are not fair. My next question is, even though you are saying about policing is like trying to limit them, I feel like we need to really take into consideration that what our debating and what a lot of parents' concerns are mostly about getting rid of the police. Whether or not they are SROs or off-duty cops, a cop is a cop, point blank, period. So I feel like we need to start involving the parents more within this discussion, students who have had experiences with these cops in these schools, because personally, I just don't feel like cops need to be in schools. I've seen how they acted outside of the schools, where their cop cars are usually targeting Black students. When they're in the school, they're specifically looking at Black students. To me, I just feel like we need to take this more into consideration. And, even if we don't have so-called SROs, they are cops overall. So I really want to know, to what extent is curriculum implemented? And my last question is about this equity committee. While I understand there's certain language about it, like, the ways in which it can be done because of legal, I've seen it happen where, they specifically said Black and brown people. We want Black and brown people on this committee. So I'm wondering, is there any way around it legally wise? Because I do think there's something about having the people that we are asking to do the work being involved. Nothing for us without us. Nothing about Black and brown people without Black and brown people. Same thing goes for any other community. And also about COVID, is there any way that more parents or more students can get involved within this committee of trying to help out the schools? Because I definitely know that my mom in particular, would love to be a part of it and has a lot to offer. And I'm just concerned that, this will be another committee where it's predominantly white parents and people from different backgrounds are not, being noticed within this. So that's all I have to say.
Okay.
And I would love to hear the feedback.
Okay. Thank you, Charity. Through the chair, I'll try and run through these quickly. Curriculum compliance. So teachers are required to submit lesson plans where they note which standards they're doing, and they have to reference the curriculum guides. Those are checked by administrators. I'll look into the situation at Woodbridge High School where you're saying that parts of the curriculum were not covered. Gender neutral bathrooms, that's a tough one. We have, to be honest with you, haven't had many requests for them as of right now, but that's certainly something that can be open for discussion. the discipline.
And also, if I could just add, Dr. Zaga, on that, just legally speaking, that the board complies with the requirements of the law against discrimination and all the pieces that go along with respect to transgender staff and students, for example, as a protected class.
Disciplinary versus race, we talked about the ethnic metrics, and we are going to be diving deep into our numbers and looking at race versus not only discipline, but also AP enrollment, honors classes enrollment, INRS or ASI types of programs. We all believe that they should be part of the representation of the community, should also be reflected in the reputation of the students and the faculty. And as we talked about earlier with the different caller, we are actively trying to address the disproportionate racial representation in our staff, but we still have to comply with many different laws as far as hiring. Our police in our schools are there for safety and security. So they are there to protect the students. We certainly understand how the students feel, and we, as we mentioned before, we are going to address it. But the fact that the police are there for the most part to keep intruders out, and that's a big part of their job. So we want to make sure that our students are safe. And every time that there's one of these tragedies in the country where there's a school shooter, people request and people ask and people demand even more police in schools. So it's not something that we're just going to stop, but we can address the issues that students have with the police. And then finally, the back to school plan, as I said, it's mostly administrators, because right now we want to put together a proposal. Don't be mistaken that what we're putting together is a proposal, and the proposal will go forward to the public when we have our public meetings. But to ask the intricacies of a high school schedule or of a middle school schedule, that's not something that people who aren't educators would understand or possibly have input into. Once we talk about all these things and are compliant with all the demands from from Trenton, then we'll bring our proposal to the public. And if we have to change it, and if we hear anything from the public, we will certainly make those changes. But based on the 7,000 responses to our surveys, there really is no clear choice of what people want to do, whether it's send their children to school or not send them to school, or whether they want them to go full day or half day or every other day. So we really wanted to put together some sort of framework of a proposal first, from using the administration and a small group of parents, and then kind of propose it to the public. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Not really, because we have a lot of callers. Why don't you email me, or we'll set up another meeting?
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, that was. No problem.
Bye. Hello, caller. Please state your name and the town in which you reside.
Hello, my name is Steve. I live in Island, and I have one comment for the board and then one question. My comment is, you guys are all in a predicament that I know when you took your jobs you didn't sign up for. No way you could think that you were going to be making life and death decisions during a pandemic. But I just want everybody on that board, when they go to sleep at night and they lay their head on their pillow, to realize that you guys and ladies are making life and death decisions with every family in this school district. And so far, I have to give you guys 100% marks for the way you held or the way you finished last year. And my heart goes out to all of you, but please remember, and this is coming from somebody who, if I ever caught this disease, I probably would have a hard time beating it. So please, when you guys do make your decisions, please remember you're making decisions not only for the children, but for the children's parents and the children's grandparents. That's number one. Number two, and this is on a little bit lighter note, my son is an athlete going into his senior year, and I know the football season has been thrown around that that they're going to try to play it. I can't see, if you can't keep kids socially distanced in a classroom, how you going to do it on a football field. But can you, and I'll hang up after this, can you tell me if there's any plans on having a football season or not having a football season? And I want to thank every one of you, and God bless you all.
Thank you. Through the chair, so right now there are several proposals out there. One is for a October season of, I believe it's 6 to 8 football games. Another proposal is to move the football season into the spring. One thing that is happening now is many of our teams are allowed to practice, and I spoke with one of the athletic directors today, and it was very, very positive feedback as far as, you know, I don't even think the student athletes care if they play. I think that just the fact that they were able to get back on their fields and be with their teammates and be with their coaches in person, not via Zoom or a video conference, the enthusiasm, the participation, and the sheer joy of the kids to be able to get back on the field and without even balls. They're not allowed. The football team wasn't allowed to have balls at practice. They were just out there doing drills and conditioning, and it was very, very positive. One of the few very, very positive things to come out, you know, since schools closed in March. So you know, we feel it's important that we get the students back to some sort of normal activities, which would include sports. And right now there are a couple of proposals out there, nothing definite, but you know, it was good to see those kids social distance and enjoying being part of a team again.
One more?
One more caller.
Okay.
Hello, caller. Please state your name and the area in which you reside.
Hi, this is Anna from Fort.
Hi, Anna. How can we help you?
Yes, hi. My question is, what is the average classroom size in the district? And I'm sure that was, I'm sure you have that number, because I'm trying to understand of the two plans for reopening, why we have the students divided into 3, and obviously I was not involved at all, and I'm sure a lot of work went into coming up with the plans, but most of, I guess, plans that I heard prior to the district sending out the survey from many areas in New Jersey involved students divided into 2 groups, not 3.
Do you have any other questions or?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. So through the chair, I'll address that.
Yeah, Doc.
So the average classroom size is about 900 square feet. For students to have a 6-foot diameter, they would need approximately 112 square feet. So 900 divided by 112 is about 9. 8 to 9 students we can fit in the classrooms. And that's how we got, so if a average class size is somewhere between 20 and 25, we would only be able to fit, we couldn't fit, if we divided it into 2, we couldn't fit 12 kids in a class. We can only fit 9. That's why we had to go to 3. Some districts, I know other districts are dividing their students in half, and from what I understand, they're operating on the premise that 30 to 40% of their students will not show up, who have already decided they're not coming back to school. So that's how they're getting away with dividing the students into 2. The problem with that is if they decide a month from now that they do want to come back, then there's no way they can hold classes. Because as we said before, the 6-foot rule is definite. So, and I know that there's the American Association of Pediatrics, their recommendation was 3 feet between students, but 6 feet is safer, and we are going with safer. So we're doing 6 feet. So that's where the 3 groups comes into play. If at some point the regulations change and the incidence of COVID-19 decrease in our community, and that 6-foot number changes, then we can change our plans. And we have the plan that we're going to roll out has different phases to it, depending on how well things go or how bad things go. So, but as I said, I can't say it enough times, we are erring on the side of caution and safety for our students. So we want to make sure that we'd rather have 6 kids in a class than 12, because 6 is safer. And as far as, like I said, the other districts, from what I understand, they're operating under the premise that not everybody will show up. I don't think it's safe to do that. I think it's a little bit too risky for us to do that. So if we don't have enough students in the class, then we'll change. But that's something that we won't know till September, till we have our first class. So as I said, we'll have a plan. We'll have the plan out, and the plan will be based on student safety. Okay.
Thank you for the explanation. And I guess there is no plan to potentially, prior to school start, to have parents decide whether they want to go all virtual and then sort of have that established ahead of time.
That's something that I'll be addressing at the meetings, at the parent meetings.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. President, that was our last caller.
Okay. All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So motion.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Harris. Have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Treeweiser. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Meeting's adjourned.